since then, I've been living all over, doing a lot of conservation work with trail crews and things like that. And yeah, I've been here since August. It's been a pretty good time.
Cool. So the plan for the day, for the next little bit, we're going to tell you a little bit about our program. We'll focus really specifically on what we do within the graduate program. We're going to talk about what the experience is like academically in terms of the project work that you'll do, and then also Sam's here to provide a little bit of perspective on the graduate student life experience and what it means to be a member of the community here. We will probably take about 20 minutes to go through the whole slide presentation that we have, and I guess that's a little bit dependent on how many questions we get along the way. But so the mission of MOSS is to facilitate place-based collaborative science inquiry within the context of Idaho's land, water, and communities. So what we really do here is we get kids outdoors, exploring the local environment, connecting to this place, doing science, getting messy, really understanding what it's like to engage in this process of trying to understand the places where we live. We work with about 2,500 students a year and around 200 different teachers who come here to with their students as part of the program, and then they also participate in professional development with us. And then, of course, we have the graduate program, and we take around 24 students every year, most of whom are doing an MS in Natural Resources through the College of Natural Resources.
So with our graduate program, we're really fortunate in how we've developed and what we're able to offer. Graduate students come to us, and whether it be from Kansas City or elsewhere in the United States, and they'll spend a year at our McCall campus. And that time they'll pretty much be alternating between coursework and then actual practicum experience working with the school kids that come from across the state. The third semester of the graduate program finishes in Moscow, Idaho, on the main campus. One of the advantages I think we have over other graduate school experiences is it's kind of like, I'm often at a loss for words, but I think of it as a master's program incubator. People can come to us. We have structure. We can assign projects or that include a stipend for people to work on, and it kind of provides a focus. And then once they have time on campus, we're able to network and set them up with faculty on the main campus.
So like I said, for today, the plan is to talk about just an overview of the program focused on the graduate experience, talk a little bit about life outside of coursework and teaching. We'll go over some financial stuff, talk briefly about where our grads have gone on to, and then, of course, if we haven't answered questions already, we'll leave time at the end for questions from you. So starting with the academic coursework. This is just an overview of what a typical program would look like. So it begins with the fall semester. There's a field science teaching, which is like our orientation and training. And so it's like how to teach the curriculum here, what this place is all about, just kind of an immersion into living and working in McCall and sort of like getting the hang of being here. And that's the first month that students are here. Once we start like the core of the academic experience in the fall semester, students alternate between being in courses and teaching in our residential field science program. So a student they would take place-based education, leadership, and place-based ecology for 1 week, and then teach for a week, and then go back into class for a week, and then teach for a week, and alternate like that for about 10 weeks until we hit the fall break. And then we transition into wrapping up the fall semester and starting to think about transitioning to the winter curriculum, which starts at the beginning of the spring semester. And then in the spring, our focus in the graduate program is on science communication, place-based ecology, and research methods. Those are the academic courses, and those are alternating then with the teaching practicum as well. So there's a little bit of an orientation period in the winter, and then dive back into alternating between teaching and learning. Over the summer, our students are required to do an internship, and this is a pretty open sort of, students can choose to do something, really anything, as long as it advances their professional development. So they just have to justify to us that it somehow advances their professional development and uses the new skills and knowledge that they've acquired so far in the program. And in the fall semester, so all of that coursework up until now, up until the summer, takes about 24 credits, which really leaves only 2 more 3-credit courses to be chosen as electives, and then research credits to complete the MS project. And most students are able to complete all of this in as little as 3 semesters, like Gary said. So going into a little bit more detail about what the courses are like.
Sure. Our field ecology course, again, if you've noticed, we use the words place-based education quite a bit in our curriculum. And one of the advantages our field ecology course has is our location. We're located inside Ponderosa State Park. I believe it's about 1,300 acres. And what we're able to do is use that environment to explore a lot of content, not only on a graduate level, but also work with the graduate program to incorporate it into our K-12 programming. And I think that leads to a deeper understanding of the content, not only knowing the key concepts, but how to transfer that content to a different grade level.
Sam, I'm wondering if you could just talk for a minute about how the coursework connects to your experience as an instructor in our program. So, like, how does field ecology relate to being a teacher in the program?
Yeah, so a lot of the information that you learn in the field ecology class is pretty translatable to your teaching week and all the fun facts that you learn about the forest here. You can definitely relate to and have it make sense for the kids. And, you know, we all kind of work together in trying to make that translation possible, because when you learn it from in your class, it's probably a little higher level, and you're reading like scholarly journals about the ecosystems, but then you discuss amongst the other students and sometimes in class about how you can relate that into an activity that you can take into the teaching week.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that's probably a good transition into the place-based education course. So if the place-based ecology course gives instructors some of the content that they might be working with, the place-based education course is really focused on teaching methods and setting up students so that they can facilitate learning in productive ways. So that we start at the beginning of the semester really focused on the skills of teaching, and then we end the semester diving pretty deep into the philosophy of education and getting into some pretty deep discussions about what's the purpose of school and how do we go about teaching in ways that support these really lofty learning goals that we have, like improving the health of the planet, for example. So we start really basic with things like facilitating discussion and asking questions, and end with really deep questions about the purpose of school. You want to add anything?
Yeah, well, in my experience, I don't have a lot of formal teaching experience, so definitely the beginning of the education class is really helpful, because you learn how to, like, we spend a whole week like talking about questioning and how you can be effective asking the right questions, and then facilitating discussions, and then the teaching order, or like the phases of teaching a lesson. And it's really helpful to kind of get that formal education and knowing how to actually teach a student something.
So that brings us to our last course, and I'll let Gary talk about that.
Sure. For our leadership class, what we're trying to do is take some of the key concepts involved with leading groups in the field. So that kind of, you know, building on that K-12 program and understanding group dynamics, and looking at leadership theory and the practice of it, and then expanding out to include incorporating the graduate community experience, and then setting it up so that people have skills or understandings they can then transfer to affect change in the world around them.
Nice. Okay, so this brings us now to the content for the spring semester. So in the fall, the program is really focused on giving our graduate students the skills and knowledge and the tools for their toolbox to be effective instructors in the residential K-12 program that we have, and as well as effective members of their own teams and their own living community here. In the spring, we start to broaden our perspective a little bit, and so we think about communicating science beyond what it means to work with K-12 students. What would it mean to communicate science to teachers or to just general members of the public? What is good communication? How can we do it effectively? So that course also has some very practical skills, but then also that sort of deeper philosophical component about how can we more effectively communicate about really challenging global issues like climate change, for example. Students then also in the spring semester really start to develop their proposal for their master's project. So we have a course that's focused on research methods because those are tools that students will need if they're going to be doing a research component to their master's project, or if they're going to be doing a project that requires some sort of evaluation. Oftentimes students will develop lessons or curriculum and then they want to know, is it effective, or do the teachers find it useful? So then they have to understand some aspect of, it's really focused on social science data collection. And then students work individually with their major advisors to develop the proposal for their master's project. And then by the end of the spring semester, they're expected to have given a public presentation of their project proposal. So that brings us to the teaching practicum. And Sam, could you just take a minute to explain sort of what it's like during your teaching week?
So during the teaching week, I guess like starting from the beginning, on Monday you meet in the morning and you just kind of go over like what school's coming and just any important notes. You also help clean the campus up before the kids get there, and then they show up in the afternoon. And then the afternoon you do, you meet your group, you play some team building games, you get to know their names and understand where they're coming from a little bit. And then the next 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday, you are teaching content. And so you just take them out into the state park. And prior to you plan like an itinerary or like a general idea of what you're going to do, depending on what your content day is. And there's several content days that you or the teachers of the school select for you. So there's like an ecosystems day, adaptations, hydrology, geology. There's an energy day. And so you know ahead of time what content you're teaching. And then those are the next 2 days, and you're just out in the field the whole entire time until 4 o'clock. And then Thursday is called Inquiry Day. And this is a time for your students to really shine. They come up with an inquiry project that is practical to do in the time frame that they have. Kids think of all sorts of ideas, and you guys start to steer them in the right direction of like, oh, this is like actually like really cool science project that we can do. And the school has a lot of resources. So you can do things like water quality in different areas of the park, or like soil samples, or you can measure trees. We have increment boards, so you can do like tree age and things like that. And so that's all day Thursday. And by the end of Thursday, you have completed an entire project and created a presentation. And your presentation can be in any format from like a skit to a poster to a PowerPoint presentation. And then Friday morning, all the groups present their findings to their fellow classmates, and then they're gone by lunch. Yeah, so that's a teaching week.
And typically during teaching weeks, the grad students have a lot going on, but we hope that over the course of the year, they're going to be using all of these experiences that they're gaining through teaching the K-12 students to bring into the classwork that they're doing, to make sense of what they're learning about, and then also taking ideas from class and bringing it into their teaching. So it's really, there's a pretty tight relationship between the coursework and the practicum. So then the third component of the program is this assistantship that we've referred to at least once. With the assistantships, these are projects, for the most part, that have come to us from external agencies that have funding to involve students, graduate students from Moss, in some component of the research or some component of their outreach and education plans. So I say come to us. We've typically worked on the proposal and the development of the idea, but they're connected to bigger groups, so beyond the sort of Moss community. So for example, we've got one that's 8 of our students this year are working on a big biofuels project, and they're developing we're in the last year of this project, and we've developed a bunch of lessons and curriculum, and we're putting it all together into an interactive ebook that teachers can use in the classroom. That's going to have like videos and information and lesson plans, and it's kind of an ambitious project. We've got 8 students working on it. So they're taking best practices from what they're learning about teaching, incorporating new understanding about biofuels and energy literacy, and then putting it into this book. Sam is working on a project around ecosystem services.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain a little bit about what your stuff is?
Yeah, so my assistantship is working with the EPSCoR project, which is a NSF-funded project. And what we're doing is we're working, me and another guy, Luke, we're working with a specific site in Boise where we are planning a week-long adventure learning workshop for middle school and high school teachers to take during the summer, which we will actually be back for during the summertime. So we'll be back for a week, well, depending on where we are, begin the summer. Yeah, so far, like what we've done is we've actually interviewed people that took the workshop last year, and we're going through those interviews and kind of combing through, and we're looking into what improvements we can make for this summer's workshop.
So with each project, there's some pretty well-defined tasks. So like Sam explained, okay, we're doing interviews with teachers, we're planning this workshop. And then we work with our graduate students to identify the piece of that project that they're going to make as a specific research or project contribution. So for example, I actually don't know what you're thinking about for your work.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about trying to incorporate, or as far as a master's project, it's incorporating how service, like conservation work or just community service to the environment, how that, I guess, relates to the person's drive to sustainability and environmentalism. And this project, or at least for the assistantship, what we're thinking is trying to have one of the events during the workshop be a service project, like planting trees or invasive species removal, and then seeing how that affects like the teachers and how they want to implement that in their classrooms.
Interesting. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the combination of the assistantship tasks plus identifying the specific contribution, like Sam is talking about, this is what this is what's entailed in a MS project. typically our students aren't doing research per se. There's usually a very applied contribution of like some sort of product, although it is possible to also just do more directly research-oriented things. So like Sam described, designing a day of service, but also understanding how did that impact teachers, you know, motivation to do service with their students. So there's a research component as well as the applied actual planning of the service day. Hands up again, talking about the life of a grad student.
The life of a grad student. Yeah, keep it professional. So if you're living on campus like I do, it's a really nice environment to be around. You have access to like lakefront property, which is pretty cool. I currently live in a yurt, which is pretty nice. It is getting pretty cold here, so it does make it a little tough sometimes, but the heaters work. Just gotta maybe pack an extra couple blankets. Yeah, so you're either in your classroom week or your teaching week, which I would say are both pretty comparable in workload. During your classroom week, you have assignments every day, and you meet in your class for the majority of the day. Yeah, and so it's a lot of work throughout that week. But then you get to your teaching week, and you're like, oh, all right, like my day ends at 4, but you're with a group of kids the whole day. So by 4 o'clock, you're like pretty exhausted. And I mean, it's fulfilling still. But yeah, and so both kind of go hand in hand. And I think with the week rotation, it's really great because doing 2 weeks in a row of one would probably become a little stressful. So you get a great mix. Half of the group is in classroom week, while the other half is in teaching week. So on your off time, it's really nice to like swap stories to use for your next week, or just kids are kind of like constant entertainment. So you have pretty great stories from the people that are teaching. And outside of classroom and teaching, there's a lot of fun stuff to do in town. Or you're with a lot of people normally that are pretty involved in the outdoors. So there's someone always planning like a climbing trip, or going hiking, or going to some like hot springs nearby. We're getting ready for winter, so everyone's getting really excited to go skiing. I know I am. And there's a little mountain, or it's a pretty decent size. Yeah, I don't know, I haven't been there yet, but I already have my pass to go up to Brundage Mountain, which is pretty close. You can actually see it from our campus, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know. I got into disc golf. I didn't think I would get into that, but yeah, there's a lot of people. I mean, with our class, we have a pretty big class, but everyone's really just excited to be like outside and doing things. But there's also a spectrum, though. I mean, there's people that are doing stuff all the time, but then there's also people that stay on campus, you know, whether doing work or just, you know, they're more of like the watch a movie type kind of relaxation. So there's a whole spectrum of things to do here.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it's a nice mix of different,
yeah,
from the outdoor extreme enthusiasts to the I like to relax
yeah.
and look at nature and watch a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So to summarize, looking at the program, again, we try to take all our major themes, whether it's ecology, education, science communication, research methods, and leadership, and we try and weave those both through not only the academic experience, but the practicum experience as well. We've worked really hard over the years to construct a curriculum that is, I guess, holistic in its approach, and that one experience will feed the other. If you participate in our program, you can expect about 600 mentor teaching hours. And one thing that we didn't mention is while you're in the field working with students, you can expect to have one of our faculty or one of our staff observe your teaching experience. And they're there to coach you and help you advance and gain some knowledge there. And then kind of a big hook for people that come to our program is that you can get a master's degree in 3 semesters. And yeah, that's kind of us in a nutshell.
In a nutshell. Okay, down to the nitty-gritty here. So rather than reading to you all the numbers on the screen, I'm going to encourage you to look at this, and then if you have questions, there'll be a link to our website at the end. So there's a much more detailed picture about the finances on our website. But I do want to point out the overall cost of the program does vary to some extent if you're a resident or a non-resident. But we have a number of ways to reduce the cost for you. So, for example, students who are connected with the project, and every student who is accepted is given the option of taking on a project, and usually everybody does. And that comes with a stipend of $5,550. Students who work with us in the summer get paid. So we take field instructors for our summer programs and we pay them. So that's a potential summer internship opportunity. There are other paid internship opportunities that students get. So the 5,000 number is sort of dependent on what students can arrange. But the students that are here with us do get paid pretty well to teach in our summer programs. All students are eligible for work study. So in principle, somebody could earn up to $1,000 if they're really motivated to do, we have everything from like maintenance help, working in the kitchen, to doing some administrative stuff and helping us with like setting up interviews for the next graduate class. So there's a range of different work study opportunities. And the cool thing about them is it's a great way to get a truly inside perspective on the operation of a small educational organization that's part of a much bigger educational organization. It's also possible in the 3rd semester to secure teaching assistantships and research assistantships. And those are typically, especially with the teaching assistantships, those are students in the 2nd semester will be connected with those. So like Sam, for example, if he wanted to try to get a teaching assistantship in his 3rd semester, he might say, hey, Carla, I'd really like to find a teaching assistantship. And I say, great, I will let the department chair know and spread the word. So it's kind of like we let it be known that people want these things. They exist. About a third of our students last year got teaching assistantships. And frankly, the more students that we have that get them, the more likely we are to get more, because our students come in with pretty great teaching skills, and this is a huge asset to the folks on campus. That they're like, wow, these grads really can contribute in these TA positions. And of course, it's possible to get student loans. I guess what the last thing we just want to talk about is the impact of the program. So at this point, we have worked with more than 200 graduate students, and they have gone on to do a variety of different things. Some have continued on to get their PhD and are now doing postdoc positions, one with the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. One of our grads had last year was awarded a White House award because he started a program similar to MOS as part of his graduate work in Arizona. We've also got a number of students who are now in coordinator type positions with like the Yellowstone Association Institute, for example, or working at other residential environmental learning center type opportunities, Nature Bridge, field instructing there. We also have a number of our grads that ended up getting a teaching certification in addition to the work that they do here. And I think we've got about five former grads in the school system just here in McCall, as well as a number spread out across the country. So really, at this point, not only are grads doing good things, and we feel pretty great about the education that they received here and the way that it supported them to find these good jobs and do good work there. But our students that are coming into this system, it's really like they have an amazing network to connect to. So if Sam, for example, wanted to know somebody who was doing something in conservation, chances are we've got an alum somewhere doing work in that area. We can connect him and say, it's a pretty good, the name brand recognition at this point is pretty good and pretty powerful.
Yeah, Carla, if I could add, we're really excited this year. We're having our first alumni weekend, and so we've been putting out the word, and we're going to have I think February 12th through the 15th, we're going to have a weekend where we can bring all of our grads who want to, former grads, back to us, and we're hoping to kind of really formalize that alumni network, introduce them to our current grads, and kind of take advantage of this this great network that we've got set up out there.
Awesome. So I'm going to get to the last slide so you can see the link. Tom, I saw that you have a question, and Andrew, thanks. See ya. Andrew had to leave. Sorry, we're totally up against the end of the time here. So here's a link to our website, a ton of information there. I encourage you to check that out if you have other questions. But Tom would like to know from Gary more detail on the leadership course, skills taught, and outcomes.
Sure. So the course originated with mainly a focus on outdoor leadership, and so a lot of the main components initially were looking at facilitation techniques, debriefing techniques, team building, low elements, initiatives, icebreakers, that sort of thing, and then they expanded into using an understanding of group dynamics to manage teams in the field. And now it's kind of developed into with more of a focus on leadership itself and not necessarily just outdoor leadership, but building on that, looking at how you can take an idea or a concept and kind of a term I use a lot is challenge the status quo to have impact on your community. So outcomes from the class include doing a leadership, I guess it's a multimedia project where it's kind of interviewing people about leadership to develop a different understanding and kind of using some of the skills that will come into play for the science communication piece the following semester. And then have the students break up into small groups and engage in a stealth leadership project. And so that's, I just met with teams today and I've got groups of 4 or 5 students who have a kind of a secret mission that they've laid out to impact their MOS experience or the community at large.
Thanks.
And then Tom, you also wanted to know, oh, did you have a follow-up to that?
Oh, there's another topic.
Okay. You wanted to know typical ages of the kids in the program, like the school kids?
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah, so the range is really 4th through 8th grade during the school year, and then in the summer it's a 50-50 mix of high school and middle school students. And then we also have a summer day camp in the summer where we've got little tiny people here. Tiny humans. Okay. MS and Natural Resources. Sam, has this impacted you in job interviews? How does your resume read?
Oh, well. I'll be honest, I haven't really looked into that yet as far as the summer goes. I'm hoping it does make a big impact, though. It's definitely nice. I guess I kind of feel weird putting that on my resume now. This is a personal preference.
Yeah, so Sam's just one semester in of the 3 semesters. Maybe that's a clarification, so he's not quite there yet.
Yeah, I'm not all the way through, but I'm definitely excited to put it on my resume. Put that out there.
Okay.
I think it does open doors to folks if, if they've got a background in outside of the field of natural resources or science. I think that's a really great, it opens doors that may not, we've had students come through with like liberal arts degrees in, English and history and things like that, and go on to do fisheries programs after being part of our program. So, I think that's the transition there. I don't know if that's answering the question.
Okay. All right.
Other questions?
Can you go back to like what?
Andrew, one question. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if I was on mute or not. Can you go back to like the first slide where you're sort of showing the organization of the programs across the different semesters? Yep. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
This one?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Andrew had a question. He may be gone now, but the extra semester, what ages and subject would be taught? And so I'm wondering, Andrew, if you mean this during the summer, or do you mean in the fall? It really looks like typical graduate school on the main campus in Moscow, taking 2 graduate courses and finishing up your research project. So there's typically no teaching unless you get a teaching assistantship, and then it would be with undergraduate students. In the summer, if students stay here, it's working with middle school and high school students.
What about for like if you do try and get a teaching certificate, because it's another semester, right?
Mm-hmm. So Sam is asking if you do a teaching certification, it's at least an additional semester, depending on what your undergrad degree is in. And typically, it's actually really hard to get an elementary certification in Idaho, but it's easier to get a secondary certification in a subject area. So typically that's what our grads do, is to get a subject area certification. We've had several students with geology backgrounds go on and get they're like teaching earth science and environmental science and ecology and yeah.
Interesting.
Other questions? These are good ones.
You guys familiar with the Teton Science School program?
Yep. I'm a graduate of the Teton Science School program.
Okay. You want to compare and contrast?
Keep in touch with a lot of those folks.
Seems somewhat similar, but it's sort of funny that you guys can get to a graduate degree in 3 semesters, and they don't provide a graduate program. I mean, I know you guys are sponsored by.
I think the difference.
Yeah, you're in Idaho school system. Yeah.
Yeah, we are the University of Idaho, and that's a big difference. So they have relationships with University of Wyoming and other universities, but because we're the University of Idaho, we can pack a lot of credits in that count towards the degree in the first 2 semesters, and it's intense. I mean, I will tell you that much. Right, and so we've got there's 4 of us here who are full faculty members in the Department of Natural Resources and Society. So that's the other difference. The faculty here that you would be working with are in the regular faculty system. We can advise students in the same way that on-campus folks can advise students. We're engaged in scholarship in the same way. Like pretty much all of the same expectations for on-campus faculty are held for the faculty here. So it's a little bit, our staffing is a little bit different than in other programs that are more nonprofits with staffing set up to run their K-12 programs, who also then have folks teaching with their graduate students. We're, because we're faculty members within the College of Natural Resources, we just, I guess it just, that makes the process a lot more efficient for our students.
Yep, seems like it.
Yeah, and so Jim made a point here. I think you guys can read it too. And I think it's a really good point that, and this is true for Teton Science School as well, but I think it's really, maybe we've emphasized the development of this idea that the theory of whether it's ecology or leadership or teaching is really then applied through the practicum. And when we say it's an intense experience, you know, some folks would say, wow, 3 semesters, can you really get that much done in 3 semesters? Can you really do a high quality master's project? Well, it's like, well, considering what the first 2 semesters are about and how much our students are asked to directly apply what they're learning, I think that the learning outcomes are pretty significant, and those get rolled into then the master's project. And in the end, what our students have to show for their work, there is the master's project, which is a significant portion of it, but there's also this really significant portion of applying these theoretical concepts to teaching and communicating science. So that in itself is a really, I think, marketable tool. You know, like a lot of people have teaching experience, but having thought deeply about teaching practice while engaged in it, that's not as typical.
Yeah, it's really nice just kind of having the back and forth week to week, because you can definitely bring in something that happened during your teaching week, you know, about a certain kid who just wouldn't pay attention or something like that. And then you get to your leadership class the next week, and you can kind of talk about like attention getters or like debrief strategies to make that kid more involved and apply that to your next week. Or you can use some of the topics that you learn in your place-based education or something cool that you really learned in ecology and tell that to your kids the next week. And then you just kind of keep building and building. And then kind of to go with Carla was talking a lot about, it's intense and a little like exhausting. So my undergrad, I went to a school, Colorado College, and they have this unique schedule called the block plan, which is you take one class at a time for 3.5 weeks, and you do a whole semester's worth of work in 3.5 weeks. And having that experience, that's definitely helped me out here. And I would say that they're pretty, as far as like the daily structure goes, you know, you're working all day on something, whether it be class or with this group of kids. So as far as like the intensity of the schoolwork, you can definitely pack in all the information. But yeah, I guess as far as like the more daily routine and the weekly routine, I thought that might help with listening.
That's great.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Yeah. So we've got a bit past our scheduled time here. Tom, really appreciate your questions and talking with you today. And if you have follow-up questions, please feel free to email me. My contact was there at the end. You can also go to the website, reach out that way. Yeah, so thank you.
Good overview. Thank you very much.
Call it a day.
Thank you very much. Good overview.
All right, take care, Tom.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye, thanks.
Thanks, Jim.